Hello, I am author Nathaniel Sewell, and this is really my hair. Well, this is my hair. I'm 59 years old and I've still got hair, so I'm lucky. But Nathaniel Sewell's not my given name. My given name's Robert. Um, and I want to tell you a story about me and my writing journey. I think it might be interesting why I use a pen name. I use it for a very specific reason, and quite frankly, it's kind of a sad story. But I thought the folks I work with, my website and some other marketing things, asked me about my books. I've written 6 novels now, and short stories and poems and that sort of thing. And I plan to share them on this channel and just kind of go through my process of how I write novels. This is how I do it. Get into dialogue and other things. But before I did that, I thought, I really need to come clean and be truthful about why I use a pen name. And it all relates to my very first novel that was published many years ago now, and it was called Bobby's Socks. Bobby's Socks was a tough story. Anybody that's read it, I've always gotten pretty good reviews. To be put it blunt, it's about the epigenetic link between child sex abuse and young adult suicide. And the reason I get emotional about it is because I was one of those kids many, many years ago that thought, sometimes almost daily, about harming myself. It's been a struggle for me my entire life. I've gotten into situations with ladies that I liked that I left them confused, I guess is what I would say. So let me tell you a story. I'd sold a business and I stayed with the business for a while. It's in the medical malpractice insurance business, and so I've been on an underwriting side and claim and all this kind of stuff. So I read about a lot of bad stuff, and anyway, I had a client that came to me who was a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist had about what's called a bad outcome, which is a nice way to say it was a death case. What had happened is the patient was schizo, had jumped off their bed, ran down a hallway in a hospital, and jumped out the 3rd floor. And you can figure out the rest. So in so doing, I went on the internet. It's not as sophisticated as it now, but at the time I just punched in suicide, schizophrenia, and some other things. And what I found was this article about these professors at McGill University theorizing about what's called a suicide gene. So I read the article. In fact, if you want to read the article, it's on my website under Why I Write. I recount a lot of this on my website, but I thought coming from me direct might help somebody. It might help them to realize why I write the novels I write. I will tell you, I write novels about things that piss me off, period. Hard stop. If it doesn't bother me, I'm not even going to try, because I know I'm not going to be interested. I'm not going to write a murder, mystery, detective series. Definitely not going to write anything that's pornographic at all. I write in a very clean way. I rarely use any expletives at all. But let me get back to my story. So I read this and I identified with it to the point that I was sitting in my office and I was having a hard time breathing. It hit me that hard because I realized how lucky I am that I got through all that somehow. And so I went home and I told my then wife about the story that I wanted to write. She knew about my childhood. She had actually found out by accident. You see, someone watching this knows exactly what I'm about to say. 99% of victims never talk, ever. The reasons are pretty obvious. Your body lies to you, tricks you. The concept of shame is very, very difficult. At the time, I didn't compare myself to some war veteran that came back and developed PTSD. I didn't compare them until later, and I realized I'd actually been through a lot of trauma. And I'll not gross you out with why and some of the other things. It's really not relevant. So I wrote the manuscript. I taught myself how to write a novel. And I thought, okay, let's just submit. I went through all the process, editing, and so forth. And I thought it was at a point where I could at least let some people look at it, and let's just see where this goes. So to my surprise, I got an offer to publish Bobby Socks within weeks, not months, which is typical, or even no response at all, which is what you typically get turned down a lot, so you have to kind of work through that. But I'd written the novel, and now all of a sudden, be careful what you wish for moment. Somebody actually wanted to publish it, go through the entire publishing process, the editing, book cover, book design, all this stuff. And then there's this one thing called who wrote it, the author. And the author was me. And I remember this vividly. I realized I didn't want to put my name on that story because I didn't want anybody to think it's an autobiography. And parts of it is, but the story itself, the perpetrator and that sort of thing, I made that all up. It's all fiction. I don't like focusing on those people. So I had a decision to make, and we went and talked about it, and I went, I need to use a pen name, I guess. And we thought, what would be our pen name? We never had kids, but if we'd had a boy, we would have named him Nathaniel. Nathaniel's a family name on my side. I always liked the sound of the name. It's just liked it. And then I picked the name of my favorite human being ever to walk on the planet, and that would be my grandfather, Sewell. Sewell was a preacher. I actually write about him in one of my novels called Fifth and Hope. I'll talk about that another day, but that's where the pen name came from. And, I'll cut to the chase. The book gets published. Nathaniel Sewell, that kind of gave me a little bit of a way to hide, I thought, But eventually my friends found out, and people I knew in business. And I had to tell them. They go, hey, what's your book about? I bet it's funny. And I had to go, not so much. And then I told them what it was about. The hardest was telling my best friend of almost 50 years now, and he didn't say anything for. I called him and said, "Hey, I made you kind of a character in the book, and here's what's coming out." And he said, "What's it about?" I told him, and he went real quiet. And then he said, "Tell me who did it. I'm going to kill him." And I knew he was serious. And I said, "It doesn't matter. It's okay." And then he thought about it, and this is a thing that really gets me emotional. Every person I told, all came, after they were, got past the shock, they all came back to me and said, "I love you." Every single one of them. And for that, I can't possibly say anything better has happened in my life than that. Having someone tell you, "I love you," is, in that context in particular, it's pretty powerful. So I put that book out there under a pen name. I've had people ask me about it over the years that don't know me. And they just think I'm being fancy or whatever. I'm not. I'm not being fancy at all. But after a while, I wanted to write another novel or two, and I decided just to keep the pen name, be consistent so they can find me and maybe find Bobby Socks. That's really what I was thinking, is give them a reason to go, what's that book about? It's about a lot. I won't belabor the point. I mean, we got into everything. I mean, we even had socks we made. These are actual Bobby Socks. But then the other side to this story is it came out in January of 2012. And that's when they caught Jerry Sandusky. So I did all this work and everything, and I'm putting a novel out literally the month that they arrested him about the same thing. It's kind of chilling to read the dialogue I created a year before, and then I watch a New York Times reporter freely allowed to ask him anything the reporter wanted, which is crazy. I mean, you're talking about a gun of a reporter. I mean, this is a hardened New York Times reporter. What are you thinking? She sat there and asked him questions, and he answered them. And it made me sick to my stomach because he sounded just like Mr. Diabolos. And so I told the publisher I don't want to market this book, ever. And so I didn't. It didn't probably do as well as it probably could have, but I didn't care. I was like, I don't want any money. That's blood money for me and anybody that's ever been abused. I decided because I was older I could handle it at the time, and I could. The people that knew. I've had a lot of really great opportunities to share it very quietly. I'll tell you a story also about, I was in a building when I started a new job, and I always kept my door open in my office. I've always done that. I feel like it's important that people should be able to get access to me without, having to knock on a door or set a meeting or whatever. I just say, come visit me, come knock on the door, come on in. And some ladies in the building that were middle-aged had learned that I was a bit of an author, and they found the book and they started reading it. I really didn't tell them about the book or what it was about. They just, found it, started reading it. And one by one, they came down to my office. They closed the door. And they sat there and told me their story. Time and time again. And I sat there quietly and just nodding my head. And it's sort of like the moment that I understand you and you understand me kind of thing. And I think that's a beautiful thing at the end of the day. Not all books have to be hugely popular. But because I used a pen name and because of these experiences, I'm free. It has no power over me anymore. I'm not afraid. I've struggled. I continue to struggle. But, you learn from things as you get older. That's the beauty of life, I think, is just keep learning, keep pushing yourself. So now I'm free. I can write about anything I want to write about. If people like it, great. If they don't, that's okay too. In a way, I guess my first novel inoculated me. If you can write a book about child sex abuse and the S word, I guess you can write about anything, can't you? My hope is that it helps people someday. Helps people that I never meet. That they kind of start to understand themselves. I've had a lot of that response. Like, that's kind of how I thought. And I was like, good. Now you know how to prepare yourself. If you need to find help, you're not afraid to go find help. I have a psychiatrist in the book. That's where the Bobby Sucks comes in. The psychiatrist realizes that drugs in and of themselves can cause more harm than help. And so she has him wear colorful warm socks because it makes him smile. Even if it's a fake smile, your body doesn't know that. Your brain doesn't know that. You have to figure out how to control your brain and not let your brain control you. And it's very difficult. And it may sound strange, but I've spent a lot of my life trying to figure that out. Because I get tired of reading in the newspaper or online about some teenager that got bullied or other. It pisses me off. I wish I could have been there with them just to say, hey, it'll be okay. We can figure this out. And I'll end this the way I always end these kind of conversations. I always asked myself, going through that period of my life, I kept asking myself a question. I never know. And I would get up each day and go, well, all right. We never know. We never know. You don't know what can happen. Life can be magical. And if you're watching this and you got this far, I want you to say that question, if you need to, time and time again. Think of it this way. You never know what might happen. It could be as simple as you decide to break the cycle. You have kids. One of those kids turns out to be able to figure out how to cure cancer. All because you didn't know, so you stayed with us. You figured out how to heal. You put one foot in front of the other. All this cliche, but it's meaningful. It is very meaningful. And I want you to be with us, and I want you to feel empowered to push back and go, that's not me. That will never be me. So I just wanted to talk about my pen name as the very first entry into this channel. I'll have happier things to talk about in the future. I'll talk about all my books, how I came up with the book title, the book cover. I'll show you the book cover of Bobby Sox originally, and then what I redid it with. But there's a line in Bobby Sox that at the very end that I wrote first. And it's simply this. He got to be old. Now I'm 59 years old, and I'm into the, as they say, the end of the cycle, so to speak. I'm happy to be 59. I'm thankful. I'm humbled, because I never thought I'd be 59. Ever. But here I am, talking to a camera in my office in St. Pete, Florida. And I hope this little story helps you realize if you want to use a pen name, use a pen name if you think you need to. And if you want to write, write. Just write what you think you need to share. There are a lot of people out there that read your books, read your stories, but you never talk to. But you might have changed someone's life all because you didn't know. You tried. If you like my stuff, I'll come back. You know all the other stuff. I don't have any other fancy words to say other than, if you ever want a signed copy of Bobby Sox, I'll do it. Just send me a note through my website, nathanielsewell.com. nathanielsewell.com. And if you want to pick up a copy of it off of Amazon, I think they go for like $7. It's been out for a long time, so it's not very expensive. The science of epigenetics has really confirmed a lot of the things that I wrote about back then. But at any rate, thank you for listening and watching. And I'll say this in the best way I can. I love you.